Welcome to Shocking Infidelity Story channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. I want you to imagine something with me for a second. You're sitting across from the man you've built your life with, the one you've shared vows, bedsheets, Sunday morning pancakes, and awkward silences with. He's not raising his voice. He's not angry. He's not even being dramatic. He just looks you in the eye like he's asking what's for dinner and says, "I have a wish and I want you to say yes." Now tell me, what would you do if your husband looked at you like that? If the person who was supposed to protect your heart suddenly asked to see how far it could bend before it broke? This story isn't what you think it is. It's not about wild affairs or secret hotel rooms, at least not in the way you're imagining. No. This is about something quieter, more dangerous. It's about emotional hunger, loneliness, desperation disguised as desire. It's about the kind of love that leaves you craving and the kind of silence that screams louder than any argument ever could. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who said yes to something like this. Honestly, I used to judge people like me. I used to think if you're unhappy, leave. I used to think love was enough. I used to believe marriage was unbreakable if you just tried hard enough. But what no one tells you is that sometimes the breaking doesn't come from cheating or lying or shouting. Sometimes it comes from being forgotten a little more every day until one day you're still in the picture frame but he doesn't really see you anymore, and that's where I was. Perfect kitchen, perfect husband, perfect nothing. I didn't see it coming, not the question, not the wish, and definitely not what would come after. But that moment when he said it, it was like time slowed down, like the air between us changed, like everything I thought I knew about our marriage shifted just a little off-center. He said it so calmly, so gently, like he wasn't asking for a piece of my soul, like it was just a casual conversation, but I felt my heart drop. My hands went cold and deep down, way down. I knew this was going to change something forever, so let me ask you something. Have you ever said yes to something you knew deep in your bones would change everything, not because you wanted to, not because you believed in it, but because you didn't know how to say no to the person you used to call your everything, because you were so tired of being invisible that even a dangerous kind of attention felt better than none? This story. It's not pretty, it's not clean, but it's mine. And if you're still here, maybe a part of you has felt what I felt too, even if you've never admitted it out loud. And that's okay, because here you don't have to pretend. So if you're ready to go deeper, if you've ever been on the edge of something unspoken, subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga, because here we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart, and sometimes the quietest cracks are the ones that break us the loudest. I was 35 the year it happened, 12 years into a marriage that looked like something out of a catalog, smiling couple, nice house, stable jobs, and just enough social media posts to make it seem like we had it all together. You know, the filtered kind of love, polished, curated, safe. But behind the doors of our quiet little suburban home, truth was colder. My husband Oliver was what you'd call charming, the kind of man who could light up a dinner party with a joke and shake hands with anyone like he'd known them his whole life. People loved him. They still do, but that man never came home with me. At home he was distant present, but not really there, like a ghost who paid bills and mowed the lawn but left his heart somewhere else. Maybe at work. Maybe in the past, maybe with someone I didn't know about. I stopped trying to figure it out. For a while he traveled a lot for business. He'd say, always flying somewhere, always with a suitcase half-packed in his mind. Already in the next city, I used to wait up for him, text him little things like "miss you" or "be safe." But eventually the silence I got back taught me to stop expecting a reply. We'd have dinner together, sure, sit across from each other, say the right things. "How was your day? Did you call the plumber? Don't forget the Smiths' dinner on Friday." But we never really talked, not in the way that mattered, the romance that left the room years ago. I could probably count the times he kissed me, really kissed me, in the last year on one hand, and I'd still have fingers left. Sex was rare, mechanical when it happened, more like checking a box than sharing anything real. But I tried God. I made the house beautiful, kept things neat, cooked his favorite meals, wore the perfume he liked, I stayed then, kept myself presentable, did everything I thought a good wife was supposed to do. But there's nothing lonelier than lying next to someone who stopped choosing you a long time ago. Our home was spotless, immaculate, even every room arranged just right, not a pillow out of place, not a dish in the sink. But it didn't feel lived in. It didn't feel like us. It felt like a showroom, quiet, perfect, untouched, no laughter echoing through the halls, no music playing in the kitchen while I cooked, just the sound of clocks, ticking phones, buzzing silence filling all the empty space. And when people came over, we performed, held hands just long enough to keep up the image, laughed at the right moments, made it look easy. People would say you three are perfect together, and I'd smile and nod while something inside me quietly broke a little more. I used to believe love was enough to carry us that. If I just stayed patient, stayed supportive, he'd come back to me, that whatever was broken would fix itself. But time has a way of wearing you down, peeling back your hope layer by layer until all that's left is routine and silence and the ache of being unseen. He never yelled, never cheated, at least not that I knew of, but he forgot me. He stopped noticing. And the worst part, I started to believe that maybe I didn't deserve to be noticed anymore. I buried my needs, told myself they were too much, that maybe this was what marriage looked like after a decade, that maybe I was just being dramatic, but I was starving, not for food, not even for sex. Really. I was starving for connection, for softness, for the kind of touch that says I still see you. And that's why when he made his wish, I listened, because when someone finally looks at you like you're still wanted, even if it's twisted, even if it's wrong, it's hard to turn away. We had the kind of marriage that looked good in pictures but felt hollow in the dark. We smiled for family dinners, but he hadn't kissed me like he meant it in years. And I used to think wishes were harmless. That's before I became one. It was a Friday night. I remember that part clearly because it was one of the rare nights he was actually home, not packing a bag, not glued to his laptop, not halfway out the door with a distracted kiss to my forehead. He poured us wine red, the good kind he usually saved for clients. I was surprised. It had been weeks since we'd sat down together like that. No television, no background noise, just the three of us in the living room, with soft jazz humming through the speakers and a full glass in each hand. He was unusually relaxed. I remember thinking how handsome he looked in that moment, not because of the way he was dressed, just jeans and a black shirt, but because he was present, fully present in a way I hadn't seen in years. He asked me about my day, actually listened, smiled at my answers, touched my knee gently, and for a second, just a second, I felt like maybe we were finding our way back to each other. Then he said it so casually, like he was asking if I wanted dessert. "I've been thinking about something," he said, swirling his wine like he was testing its legs, "and I want to try it with your permission." I blinked okay, and then came the words that would split my world in half. "It's not another woman," he said. "Not exactly, it's I want to watch you with someone else." I stared at him at first. I laughed. I thought it was a joke, a weird late-night wine-fueled joke. I waited for the punchline, for the grin, for the gotcha moment, but he didn't laugh. He just looked at me, calm, composed, like he'd been holding this inside for a long time. I tried to shake it off. I even made some awkward comment like "you've been watching too many movies," but he didn't budge. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes steady on mine. "I'm serious," he said. "I've thought about it for a while. Something I want. I need, and I want it with you, not behind your back. Not with secrets, with honesty, with trust, honesty, trust." Those words felt like daggers because while he was saying them, I couldn't stop thinking about all the nights I'd begged him to talk to me, to touch me, to look at me the way he used to. And now this was the moment he chose to be honest. He looked at me like he was asking me to pass the salt, so casual, so controlled. And I couldn't speak, not right away. I just sat there, staring at him, wondering how we got here, wondering why he would want to share me if he barely seemed to want me himself. Was this a trap, a test, some twisted way to humiliate me? Or was it real? I wish I could say I stood up through my wine, shouted "How dare you?" and walked out like a woman in one of those drama films. But I didn't. I sat there, number, and I said nothing. I didn't say yes that night, but I didn't say no either. I went to bed with the question still echoing in the room, and he didn't press. He kissed my cheek, turned off the light, and crawled in beside me like nothing had changed. But everything had, because even if I hadn't answered, something inside me already had, and that was the first betrayal. The days that followed were slow but heavy, like walking through thick fog, every step soft but uncertain. I'd wake up beside him and wonder if he was waiting for an answer, but he never asked again, not with words, just that quiet, patient silence. That said, I already know where this is going. I tried to push it out of my mind. I really did. But the thought had rooted itself deep, like a splinter under my skin that I couldn't reach and couldn't ignore. Every time I looked at him, I heard his voice again. I want to watch you with someone else. Why would he want that? Was he bored of me? Had I become routine? Predictable? Was this some kind of exit strategy, or worse, had I failed at being a wife in ways I couldn't even see? I started second-guessing everything. The way he looked at me when I changed clothes, the way he didn't, the casual touches that felt more like habits than affection, how long it had been since he'd touched me without it, feeling like a favor. And in the mirror I saw someone else, not the girl he married, not the woman I used to be. Just someone faded, hair always neat, smile always ready, but eyes that looked tired, not sleepy, tired. I stood in front of that mirror one morning, toothbrush and hand robe tied loosely around my waist, and I just stared, and it scared me the most. I wasn't horrified by what he'd asked. I wasn't disgusted, not even angry. What I felt was something worse. I felt curious, exposed, flattered. Part of me, this small, aching part that I didn't want to admit existed, felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. It was twisted. I know that, but when you've been invisible long enough, even the wrong kind of attention feels like rescue. At the grocery store, I started noticing things I hadn't in a long time. The way a younger man looked at me when I reached for the same brand of cereal, how the barista smiled too long when I handed over my card, how I straightened my blouse before walking into a room I had spent so long erasing myself for the sake of keeping things calm so long, believing that wanting more made me selfish. But suddenly I didn't want to disappear anymore. I wanted to feel something, wanted to feel wanted, and that scared the hell out of me. One night I brought it up, not the whole thing. Just enough. We were sitting at the edge of the bed, folding laundry, something mindless, safe, and I said it just like that. I've been thinking about what you said. He didn't say anything right away. He just paused, held the same shirt in his hands for a second too long, then looked at me and he smiled. Not a grin, not a smirk, but a slow, knowing smile, like I'd just stepped onto a path he had already paved. Like he wasn't surprised, like he knew all along I would get here. And that smile. It wasn't a reaction. It was a promise. Started with a dinner invitation one evening, as casually as if he were asking me to pick up bread on the way home. Oliver said, "I want you to meet someone." I looked up from the sink, dishwater clinging to my fingers, and blinked. "To a friend," he said. "Someone from work." There was a pause long enough to hang suspicion in the air, but not long enough for me to voice it. "He's nice, polite, married once, divorced now. You'll like him." And I just nodded, because at that point what was I even nodding to anymore? A few nights later I met him. Liam, he was ordinary. That's what threw me. Not some overconfident stranger with cologne you could smell from across the room, not some predator waiting to pounce. He was polite, almost too polite, like someone trying not to step on a landmine. He shook my hand like he was handling something delicate. And when he smiled, it was careful, measured, like he already knew. This wasn't a normal dinner, like he'd already been told the terms of this unspoken agreement. The five of us sat down to eat: me, Oliver, Liam, and the elephant in the room. The food was warm, but the tension was warmer. We talked about safe things at first: travel, work, music. I tried to pretend it was just a friendly dinner, but under the surface something buzzed, an energy, a pressure. Oliver watched me, not possessive, not protectively, but with something between curiosity and satisfaction, like a man watching his favorite scene in a movie he'd already seen. At one point he leaned over and whispered, "Relax, just talk to him." And I did. I talked, I laughed, I nodded, and then Liam made a joke, something harmless, something I don't even remember now. But it landed, and for the first time, and I don't know how long I laughed from my T, not from my mask. Felt good, too good. I looked across the table and Oliver was smiling. Encouraging. Liam brushed my hand as I reached for the salt. It could have been an accident. It wasn't. I didn't pull away. And that night, as I washed the dishes and Oliver stood behind me, drying them one by one, he said softly, "You're beautiful when you're relaxed." I didn't answer because I wasn't sure which part of me he was talking to anymore. We started seeing Liam more often, first at dinners, then coffee shops, then walks in the park that just happened to turn into long conversations. Felt like a game, but the roles, they kept changing. One night, Oliver handed me a gift. A box inside was a dress, red silky bare at the shoulders, fitted in all the right places. I hadn't worn something like that in years, not since the early days when he still saw me like I was new, desired, alive. I held it up, confused for what I asked for him. He said, "I want you to wear it for him." My throat went dry. I thought this was just talking. I said his eyes never left mine. "I want to see what happens when it's more." He walked away after that, and I stood there holding that dress, feeling like I was holding a question. I couldn't answer, and when the night came, I wore it. The red dress, the one he used to love the night, felt different from the moment it began. There was this strange calm in the air, like the hush before a storm. The house was spotless. Candles lit in places we never bothered to light them before. The scent of jasmine from the diffuser filled the room, warm and slightly sweet, almost too sweet. Oliver poured the wine himself, not our usual, but something more expensive. He made sure I noticed the label. He handed me a glass with steady hands and a small smile, then sat back on the couch like a man waiting for a show to begin. Liam arrived right on time. Cologne, soft but noticeable hair, neatly combed shirt tucked in just enough to suggest he cared how he looked for me. I was already wearing the red dress, the one Oliver chose, the one I used to wear for him back when his eyes followed me out the door. Now those same eyes studied me from the sidelines. We drank, we talked the music, played low old soul songs that used to mean something to me, and at some point, without fully understanding how or why, I stood up. Liam offered his hand, a simple gesture, polite, respectful, and I took it. First it was just a dance, slow weighing, safe. I moved stiffly, at first unsure of my own skin, but he was gentle, confident. He led and I followed. Oliver didn't say a word, he just sipped his wine, watched Liam leaned in close to whisper something. I don't remember what, something about the song maybe, or my perfume, or the way I moved. But whatever it was, it made me laugh, not politely, not out of obligation. It was real, and it echoed in that quiet room like it didn't belong. Then his hand moved lower to my waist, then my back, and I didn't stop it. I should have, but I didn't. His breath brushed my ear, his lips followed. He kissed me softly, tentatively, like he was waiting for me to pull away, but I didn't. There was a pause after long waited. I could have ended. Could have stepped back, could have laughed it off and blamed the wine. Instead, I kissed him back, deeper this time. Fuller. And as his hand cut my face, I opened my eyes. I looked over his shoulder and saw my husband still sitting on the couch, still holding his glass, not angry, not shocked, not hurt, just hungry eyes, fixed breath. Study like this was exactly what he wanted, or exactly what he needed to know. And in that moment something snapped. Not loudly, not with drama, but inside me, because I realized this wasn't his wish, not really. This was a test, one he never said out loud. One I never agreed to, but one I had just failed, because in the space between that kiss and that stare I became someone else, and I don't think I ever came back from her. The morning after was colder than the night had been, not because of the weather, though the windows did fog with a winter haze, but because of the silence. No words, no glances, just the sound of the coffee machine humming and the faint clink of a spoon stirring a cup. Neither of us really wanted to drink. I sat at the kitchen table in the same robe. I always wore hair pulled back, no makeup, no appetite. He poured his coffee like it was any other morning, no rush, no hesitation, just stillness. He didn't say anything about the night before. Didn't ask me how I felt, didn't ask if I was. Didn't ask why I let it happen. He just placed the cup on the counter, gave me a stiff nod that could have meant anything or nothing, and left not even a kiss on the cheek, not even a goodbye. Liam never called, not that day, not the next. Not ever. No texts, no apologies, no explanations. He vanished like a shadow, slipping back into the dark like he was never really meant to stay. And maybe he wasn't. Maybe that was always the plan. Maybe Oliver hadn't just shared me. Maybe he offered me up like a performance, a test of loyalty wrapped in the illusion of choice. And I failed. He got his wish and I got emptier. There was no aftermath conversation, no yelling, no blame, no tears, just this. Vacancy, like something sacred had been broken between us, and instead of trying to fix it, we both quietly agreed to step around the pieces. We still shared the same bed, but not the same warmth, not the same breath, not the same heartbeat. I'd lay next to him at night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the rise and fall of his C***** T to lull me to sleep like it used to. But it never came because I didn't know who I was lying next to anymore. And worse, I didn't know who I had become. I tried to carry on. I really did. I hosted the dinners, I wore the smile. I asked the neighbors how their kids were doing, dropped off banana bread like everything was fine. I even laughed in the right places, but behind every smile was a scream. I couldn't let out behind every "I'm fine" was a truth I couldn't afford to tell, because how do you explain something like that? How do you admit you let someone else touch you while your husband watched? How do you explain that he wanted it? That you agreed, that you felt something, and then nothing? I started unraveling quietly, privately, like a seam coming loose inside me, thread by invisible thread. And I don't think anyone noticed, because from the outside, I was still her, still the wife, still the neighbor, still the woman who held it all together. But inside I was dust. Some nights I'd sit in the bathroom long after he fell asleep. Just me, the mirror, and the soft buzz of silence, no makeup, no distractions, no filter, just my face bare, tired and foreign, and I'd stare into my own eyes like I was looking for someone I used to know, someone who used to smile without flinching, someone who used to believe in loyalty, in love, in herself. But she was gone, and all I saw was a woman unraveling. I asked myself questions that didn't have answers. Was I a pawn in some twisted game? Was this revenge for something I never even knew? I did, or did he just want to watch me disappear slowly, quietly? Piece by aching piece, I wanted to hate him, and some days I did. I hated the way he held his silence like a weapon. I hated the way he smiled that night, as if this was all just an experiment and I was the subject he'd finally cracked. I hated the way he let me carry the weight of the decision while he stood by untouched. But hate has a way of twisting itself into longing, because the truth is I missed him too. I missed the man who used to kiss my forehead before work, the one who held me after long days and ran his fingers down my back while I drifted off to sleep. I missed being his. I blamed myself more than anyone else ever could, because no matter what he asked, I said yes. I said yes because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave him this one thing, he'd come back to me, that I'd be enough again, that he'd look at me like he used to. I said yes because I was starving to be seen. But I think I stopped seeing myself that night. Something about that moment, about being handed over like a secret gift, about being watched, studied, used, shifted something inside me. I had crossed a line. I never thought I'd touch, not just in action, but in spirit, and there's no going back from that. No quiet morning, strong enough to erase what you feel in the dark. No coffee routine that stitches you back together after you've shattered in someone else's hands, especially when one of those hands was your husband's. Every day after that, I tried to find a version of myself that could forgive him, forgive Liam, forgive me. But every reflection whispered the same truth. Back at me, you said yes, and in doing so you lost something that doesn't grow back. Have you ever agreed to something? Not because it felt right, not because it was what you wanted, but because the silence, if you refused, felt louder than the consequences. If you accepted, because I have. I said yes, not out of desire, but out of fear, fear of being unloved, fear of being forgotten. Fear that if I didn't give him what he wanted, he'd never want me again, and that's what I keep circling back to. Was it weakness? Was it betrayal? Or was it just a woman trying to matter again, trying to feel something, trying to feel seen? So I'm asking you, not as a narrator, not as a storyteller, but as someone who's still sorting through the broken pieces of that night. Do you think I'm to blame? Or was this survival, the desperate kind that doesn't come with clean answers? Tell me in the comments. Was this betrayal? Or was it emotional survival? 'Cause sometimes the line between the three is razor thin and it cuts both ways. And if these stories stir something in you, if they make you feel less alone, less ashamed, less silent, then like this video and subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. 'Cause here we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart and we sit with the mess even when the world tells us to keep it quiet. Now, before I leave you, I want to say this. Not every affair is about strangers. Some begin right next to the person you sleep beside, in the same bed, under the same roof, with the person who once held your whole heart in their hands. Sometimes it's not the touch that betrays you. It's the permission, the smile, the silence. Wishes can sound innocent, but when they echo through a lonely heart, they become weapons, weapons we hand to the people we trust, only to watch them use them on us and then hand them back. So be careful what you agree to in the name of love, because some, yes, the soft ones, the whispered ones, the ones you think don't mean much at the time, come with no weight. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening and see you in the next videos.